Welcome back to Education Matters. Did you guess Hurricane Floyd? Then you were right, with $8.58 billion in damage. Right now, Matthew's estimate is $1.5 billion. Now, in the first segment, we heard from school leaders in Robeson County. Now, joining us to talk further is Dr. Ben Matthews. He's the Deputy Chief Financial Officer for the Department of Public Instruction. And we have Liz Bell, who is a researcher and reporter with Education NC, or EdNC. So thank you both for being here.
Thank you.
Good to be here.
Ben, I'm going to talk to you first. In your role as sort of overseeing really insurance and facilities for the Department of Public Instruction, give me a big picture about what the impact was for Hurricane Matthew on our schools.
Thanks, Keith. The big picture, we had 19 school districts with 75 individual schools that had hurricane damage, and of those 19 school districts, 8 central office locations had damage as well, to the tune of a little over $9 million, $10 million. We're still working on the absolute numbers, so the number I'm giving you is not absolute at this point, but it ranged from couple million at a school down to $50,000 at a location.
Right. And so you asked, when we were talking before the show started, your role is you sort of oversee the insurance for vast majority of the school system.
Correct.
So that's why you have a sense. Is that how schools are going to get rebuilt? Is it largely through insurance coverage?
Well, it will be, and in the case also in North Carolina, you know, we have a rainy day fund, and the governor has a group together now looking at storm recovery. And we're working, before I came here today, I talked to my insurance executive, and we're making sure that the governor's office is very well aware. For example, Robeson County. Robeson County is definitely going to need some help above and beyond the insurance coverage that's available. So we're making sure that the governor understands the need, and so there will be some state funding as well going back to support these schools.
Right. Now, Liz, I want to ask you, I invited you on because I know you're a reporter for EdNC, ednc.org, did some really great coverage about Princeville and Edgecombe County. So we heard about Robeson County, but tell me, well, first, for viewers who don't know, what's the significance of Princeville?
So yes, Princeville is a very historic town. Many people have a deep sense of connection and pride in the place and in the community. It was the first town to be fully incorporated by African Americans in the nation, and so for many it would be heartbreaking to have to leave.
Right, and I remember I was back in '99, I was working at Progress Energy, now Duke Energy, when Hurricane Floyd happened. So Princeville made national news then, and sadly, you know, what you saw, you were there, what, a week after, and then when the floodwaters, which we've learned too much about flooding, it actually got the worst there, what, about 8 days, 10 days after the storm? Right,
right. I actually was there that Friday after Hurricane Matthew hit, and at that point Princeville was still completely blocked off and evacuated. But I spent an entire day with a family who had just found out that they'd lost everything. They saw their neighborhood stand underwater on television. So that's how they found out, and although they were able to grab a few belongings before they were evacuated, it wasn't much. And Sheila Cook, the mother of that family, told me that she didn't think she could bring herself back. She didn't think she could, you know, start over there.
Yeah, we've got some photos that were part of your story. We're going to pull those up on the screen now. But yeah, talk to me about the families you talked to in the shelters.
Yeah, so as I began to spend time with and talk to more people, especially in the shelters that were set up in Martin Millennium Academy and Tarboro High, I began to really understand how torn many residents were and are, residents who spent their entire lives in Princeville and who have families who've spent their entire lives in Princeville for generations. I will never forget speaking with an older woman who was sitting on a cot in the gym floor of Tarboro High who had been through this just 17 short years ago, right, and was just in disbelief that she was back here again, you know. Right. So, and the question of whether or not to go back and rebuild in Princeville, right, for her was a harder one. It was one she didn't have an answer to at that point.
Right. And Ben, I think you probably had a little bit of deja vu yourself.
I definitely did. It was I was there in 1999 when the water breached the levee. The levee is about 35 to 36 feet tall, and the water rose there. The water rise was much more rapid in '99 than this time. I was also in Princeville within 3 or 4 days after the storm in '99. It was the most amazing thing I'd ever seen. The elementary school there was under about 12 feet of water, went all the way up to the ceiling. This time, thank goodness, the water was only about 3 or 4 feet deep, and we were able, some of the lessons we've learned is to get in there and mitigate damage just as fast as you humanly can.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, what else, what have we learned?
Yeah, well, we've learned a lot, but to the point, still on Princeville, it was an amazing thing. This time, the water did not go over the top of the levee. It went downstream, and there was so much water that it backed up on the other side of the levee, which was totally unexpected. So that was a very strange occurrence. We've learned a lot over the years. We've been dealing with this since the early 90s in my tenure. And the one major thing we've learned is absolutely you must get in and mitigate humidity immediately, because mold and mildew truly can totally destroy a structure, and we've had that happen. And so one of the things we do in our insurance group is to be sure that we provide information and support to the LEAs, the school districts, to understand the importance of getting into that school right away. And we hook them up with insurance, engineering groups who can help them and give them guidance, these after disaster groups, to help them understand, and also the reputable after disaster groups as well.
Right. Now, Liz, I was kind of struck the comment that Tara Bullard made in the interview in Lumberton when she said, "I'm not sure what normal looks like." Is that
Right.
That's probably the same thing you heard in Princeville?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that although there are still, difficult questions to be answered by individuals and by the entire community as they move forward, I have been so inspired by the resiliency of the community. So many people in their different roles, from school leaders to community members to parents, have really come together to lift each other up in this hard time. And I think a true testament to that community effort has been the fact that Princeville Elementary students who lost their entire school building were back in school in such a short time frame, and the effort that so many people and the dedication that they showed has been amazing to witness.
Now, you mentioned being back in school and how quickly they came on. And that's one question that we've been hearing about, Ben, is makeup days. It's actually state law about how many hours and how many days kids have to go.
Yes,
what's the plan there?
Well, that's an good question. We had 48 school districts during the tenure of the storm after October the 8th. The following week and weeks afterwards, a range from 1 to 17 days were missed in those 48 school districts.
Right.
Currently, the law is very, very clear. Days have to be made up. There's no question about it. There is no forgiveness. The State Board of Education has no authority. It's statutory that the days must be made up.
So it'll have to be done by the legislature.
The legislature is the one who has the authority to change that.
Well, thank you both for being here. A lot of good information. We're going to be putting more information on the screen. Stick around. When we come back, this week's Leadership Spotlight.